morning, everyone, and welcome to the Governor General's Design Challenge for 2023. Here at Questacon, it's almost the most exciting week of the year, National Science Week. My name's Elise, and I'm joined here by Their Excellencies, the Governor General of Australia, the Honourable David Hurley,
Morning.
and Mrs. Linda Hurley. Thank you so
Morning.
much and welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Liz, and great to be part of the Design Challenge again this year. Thank you.
Absolutely, and we're thrilled to have you both here. So we'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the beautiful land that we are all lucky enough to live on. Here in Canberra, we walk on Ngunnawal country and extend our deepest respects to their continuing culture and the ongoing contributions that are made to the life of this region. We extend that respect to all other peoples and families that hold connections to these lands and those regions that you join us from today. Welcome to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining us. Here at Questacon, we have been so lucky to have been gifted with 3 Ngunnawal words and some associated art that goes with them that reflect our approach to science and learning. Wagabaliri, Winange and Binyan, or play, learn and discover. And we hope that you are able to experience all 3 of these today. Governor General, the Design Challenge is an exciting collaboration between Questacon and the Office of the Governor General. What would you like to say about science and innovation today?
Always, thank you. This part of the year is always very special to us. We love the whole idea of bringing both our wits to look at a problem and understanding how we solve problems and throwing that challenge out for our viewers and schools and so forth to participate in it. And if you look at how our whole societies have evolved from ancient days to now, science and innovation are just integral to every step we take forward. And so the innovation, the bright idea, but it's not just bright idea, as they say, innovation's 90% hard work and 10% the flash of brilliance. But it's developing those basic science skills so you know how to do things. Understanding, as we'll look at today, what are mechanisms and what's a fulcrum and how do you exert energy and create difference through movement. So there's so many sort of aspects to just making today. We'll do some simple things, but the more you think about them, you say, well, I've seen that out there, but I can improve on that. I can make this more useful. So it just drives us as a society, and if you remember back to the pandemic, innovation was what allowed us to develop the vaccines to be where we are today.
Absolutely.
And that's a solid science base there, a different form of science to what we're going to be looking at today, but that's science knowledge. So I just encourage people, stick with science, stick with your maths, because they are 2 of the enormous bodies of learning that allow us to create, be better, look after each other, grow better food, high quality food, have a cleaner environment, address climate change. All those issues come out of innovation and a knowledge of science in addressing and come out with solutions. So today's part of that journey, learning how to be part of that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Governor General. And you've thrown out some fantastic Easter eggs there about using our wit and our imagination to create innovations. Because the theme of National Science Week this year is innovation, powering future industries. Now, the word innovation is a really fantastic way to describe inventions that are creative, useful and imaginative. And we're going to explore innovation today by looking at mechanical engineering. So engineers are some of the people that are leading innovation around the world, and it's their job to design technologies that solve the world's problems. So when we sent out our confirmation email earlier this week for registrations, we included a link to a Padlet where you can send us comments, questions and photos of your creations throughout the workshop today. Now, if you weren't able to follow that link, we've got a QR code up here beside my head, and we've also pushed out in the comments a link back to that as well that you can click on. I would love to hear from our audience throughout today's workshop on the Padlet. What might be some of the different elements that might be in our lives if we didn't have the innovations that we have in our everyday lives today? The Governor General mentioned some earlier when he was talking about the vaccines that have helped us to be able to open back up and get back to school and back to normal life. What are some examples of other innovations that you might use every day? You might pick up throughout this presentation some different ideas about what an innovation might be. So, Governor General and Mrs. Hurley, I've put some images on the next slide here that represent some of the innovative solutions that have been created by scientists and energy engineers in Australia. So, we've got Wi-Fi that was developed by the CSIRO, and we're using that today to present to you all from here in Canberra to everywhere that you are across Australia.
And we all take it for granted now.
Absolutely.
So how could the world exist without this?
Exactly. I remember starting to do my research when I started at school, going to the library and flicking through the catalogue in the little cards. And now I don't have to leave my bedroom. I can just get on my computer, which is fantastic.
Yep.
We've got the black box that was designed to help find aeroplanes in flight. It's actually orange, but we call it the black box.
That's right.
We've got some examples of medications like the vaccines, like penicillin, like the Gardasil vaccine that have been developed in Australia, and the humble power board. Now, in your travels around
The old
Australia,
clothesline.
and the clothesline, the Hills
invented by
hoist.
Hills hoist, invented by engineers. How do you dry your clothes in the wind? You put them on something that turns with the wind.
Absolutely.
And dries them.
Something that we take for granted in Australia, but when I've been travelling overseas and mentioned the Hills hoist, people have been really confused. Now, I know, Mrs. Hurley and Governor General, you travel a lot around Australia. What other examples of innovations have you seen in your travels? Things that you might have spotted around Australia?
Well, for a start, we
Okay.
often go in an aeroplane.
Fantastic.
And what would we do now if we didn't have airplanes and helicopters? So
And we
clever
see,
people.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And we see from the ancients, so you travel up to northern New South Wales, Brewarrina, so those very ancient fish traps there.
Absolutely.
Built by the indigenous communities there, so 40-odd thousand years old. How do we catch fish? Well, we drive them and shape them, and we build something that holds them. And we often do that. You would do that when you go down the beach. You'll often make some rocks in the water or something and see what you can find in there.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated when we come past Lake George and you see all the
Windmill.
windmills and just how some clever person organised how they work.
Absolutely. And we're going to have a look at some windmills and how we might harness some of that engineering a little bit later in today's session.
Using the tide to create electricity, if we're on a sort of electricity theme, in Western Australia, I've seen a company there that puts large, sometimes big as your school hall, bodies underwater that move up and down on a water pump. There's no oil. They generate electricity, so there's no leakage, and it just moves with the swirl under the water, not sitting on the top, just sitting underneath. So, for small island countries, that's a great way to generate electricity without any visual disturbance there. So you see these things. You go down to southern New South Wales, the Murrumbidgee irrigation area, that whole creation there of moving water around efficiently by different mechanisms. The Snowy Mountain scheme, it's one of our biggest demonstrations of how science can help us create energy out of what nature gives us.
Absolutely.
And we can return it to nature.
Absolutely.
So these are, I think, there's countless in Australia.
What about our mobile phones?
Absolutely.
Can we do without them?
Some clever person created those.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know that we could, as you said, Governor General, probably survive as easily as we do now and communicate as easily as we do without them. Certainly, Australia is a big country and there is a lot of scope for innovation and engineering across Australia, and we have a lot of problems that we have been working on solving with innovative solutions. So many of the innovations, some of those ones that you've described and some of those that we showed on our slide, have been created by mechanical engineers, and they have different parts that interact together using mechanisms. And a mechanism is a group of parts that interact together to allow or change movement within a machine. So let's have a look at some examples that you might have seen in your everyday life. Now, we can identify a mechanism using some really simple language. For example, if I do this, then this happens. And the more scientific term for that is looking at the input and the output of a mechanism. So I've got a very familiar one here. I'm sure everyone's had a few of these in their life. Mrs. Hurley, if you slide this pink button up,
I love these.
they're fantastic. What happens?
There's a helicopter.
We get a helicopter pack up, and we also got some kids here who are pointing at the helicopter. So if we slide this button here, then we pop up some images in the book here. So our input energy is the slide here, and our output is the pop up. Now, Mrs. Hurley, can you reach that silver piece there on the table?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Certainly can.
What happens if you turn the handle? It does get a little stuck in one direction.
So we could use this to, if we had a bowl, we could use this to mix things.
Absolutely. So we could make a cake with it, or we could mix some paint. So if we turn the handle up the top, it moves the crank that's in the middle there, and the beaters on the bottom spin. Fantastic. So it's an example of moving the motion from your hand to the motion in the beaters.
And these were created a long time ago, weren't they?
Absolutely.
Long time ago, and they're still in use.
They do such a fantastic job. If the power is off, you can still make your cake. Might be a little hard to cook it, but you can at least mix it up. And Governor General, just in front of you there is a slightly more complicated mechanism. Now it's stuck to the table, but you can see the handle on the right-hand side there. If you twist it, that's right. What is happening?
Well, I'm making a motion this way, and it's been translated into another direction.
That's right.
It's wondering whether what you would use this platform for now is to...
So this is a model of a flying machine that Leonardo da Vinci designed.
Created. Right.
And this was his thought. He knew about the Archimedes screw, which was a way of travelling down and lifting water up. And he thought, well, if I can do that with water, I think I should be able to do that with air. And so the idea was that that whole platform lifts off.
Like a helicopter.
Absolutely. It's currently fixed because that might be a little tricky in the studio for that to lift off. But you're turning the handle down there, which is moving the cogs in the bottom and spinning the top up there. So you're able to translate your energy, like you described, into that motion, which theoretically we might be able to take off. So this was what we now think of, one of the beginning ideas towards what we have now as a helicopter. We're going to talk about a First Nations Australian innovator a little bit later today who also designed a prototype for a helicopter. He was pretty amazing. So we are going to today make our own simple mechanisms using paper, pins and straws. Now, before we get started, you might not have time to finish your mechanisms at home today, in the same time that we finish ours. We've had a little bit of help behind the scenes, but your teacher might be able to help you out with a little bit of extra time to finish it out today. So this is our basic mechanism, and we're going to have a shot from above so that you can see it moving. Now, I have made it out of paper and straws and some pins, and when I move this bottom straw horizontally, my top straw moves in an arc. So I'm able to change the motion that I'm doing with one straw into the other. So we're going to make our own versions of those today. So what you'll need is a piece of paper. So Governor General, Mrs. Hurley, you can find your paper up there. You'll need 2 straws, 2 push pins or split pins. You might have paper clips or blue tack or something else that you're using to secure your straws.
Cool.
You'll need a little bit of tape. Here's some I prepared earlier. And you'll need another piece of skinny paper. I think of it as a bridge. It's here. We put it on the side of our mechanism here to make sure that our bottom straw always travels the direction we want. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put a hole, using our hole punch, in the end of both of our straws. And then after that, we're going to pick one straw and put a hole about 1/3 of the way or halfway up. So you've got a hole punch there, Governor General and Mrs. Hurley. If you want to pop your hole into the middle of one of your straws, lovely. It doesn't really matter where along your straw you put your hole. It's just to help you put through a split pin into your straw.
Yeah, good.
There we go. We've got our hole punches are a little tricky today. They're a little bit tight. And so sometimes it takes a little second to feed the straw through the hole punch. Lovely. All right.
No, it's not lovely because it didn't go in the right spot.
That's all right.
We just put it
We're
in there.
innovating.
That's it. Yep.
Beautiful.
Aim high. That's it. Go. Good over.
Fantastic. Lovely. All right, I want you to pick up one of your split pins and we're going to push it through the bottom of both straws, whoops, to secure them together. Now, if you're using split pins, you'll notice you need to turn them over and split the metal legs. That's why they're called split pins, so you can get one part on either side of what you're doing. It doesn't matter if they both go in the same direction, it'll do the same job. Lovely. Okay, so we're going to take our mechanism now. We're starting to look a little bit like our example here. We're going to take our second split pin and we're going to push it through that hole we just made on our straw and then through the bottom of the paper as well, using all of our muscles. Oh. All the way through. Lovely.
This
So
still has to be on the...
we want to keep both straws on the paper if we can.
Yeah.
Or at least over the top of the paper. Fantastic. And then like we said earlier, I'm going to turn it all over and split our split pins on the back to secure them to the page. Lovely. All right, the very last job that we've got to do. If we test our mechanism right now, we've got a bit of motion going on. That's fantastic. But we could twist that bottom straw in any direction. That's not quite as helpful as it could be. So let's pick up our little skinny piece of paper. And we've got some in here. Ooh, I like that. So you don't have to keep your straw following the edge of the paper. You can point it in any direction that you want and secure it with your little paper bridge. So like we put a bridge over a river, we're going to put our piece of paper over the top of our bottom straw, the one that's only got one push pin in it, and then secure each end with a piece of tape. Fantastic.
Right.
Great. Now,
Now have.
beautiful. If we test them out, like you're doing right now, Governor General, we should be able to move our bottom straw, thank you, and our top straw, lovely. And if you move your green one, Mrs. Hurley, does your top one move in an arc? Beautiful. Fantastic. I love it. All right, so we've got a basic mechanism here, and I'm sure that out in our classrooms that our students are currently working on pulling their mechanisms together. Now there's something else that we can do. You might like to use your mechanism to tell a story. I've got an example here. Mrs. Hurley, if we're looking at this one, what kind of story do you think this particular mechanism is showing?
It's showing how to to move something and put it inside something.
That's right. And in this case, hopefully, if I've done the right thing when I created this, I've got a basketball player over here, and this might be a hoop if I've been able to make it look like a hoop. And so our basketball player is shooting into the hoop. So what I would challenge you to do is to see if we can create a little bit of a story out of our mechanism here. So we've got some pictures up here, or you might want to draw. So at home you can be doing this too. If you've already finished your mechanism, how might you turn your mechanism into a story? What could you show utilising the paper and the straws and the creativity that you've got in your mind? What could you create with your mechanism? So I'll leave you to have a look at that for a moment. I'll leave the Governor General and Mrs. Hurley, they're very creative people. I have a feeling they're all over this. So
We are onto this, Elise.
I believe you. I can see a koala going on, some birds, some flowers. Ooh, we've got a bit of a native theme going on here. Ooh, fantastic.
I chose a sunflower because Mrs. Hurley likes sunshine and sunflowers. There you go.
That doesn't surprise me. She's a very sunshiny and happy person. I always get that vibe from Mrs. Hurley. Ooh,
We'll do this a bit differently.
Lovely. Ooh.
He's got one of those.
And I'm looking. Oh. Mrs. Hurley's found a snail. Delightful. So we've got some other examples here while the Governor General and Mrs. Hurley finished their, finished their mechanisms. I've got another example here of telling a story. Now, we've hidden the mechanism underneath this particular one, but we've been able to create a little dolphin leaping out of the water. That's a very simple addition by adding another piece over the top of our mechanism to create a bit more of a different story. So, the other thing that we can do, this is a very simple mechanism, but if you have a look at the Padlet, you'll notice that there's actually an image up there that shows some different kinds of mechanisms. So you could explore how you might interact with more straws, more split pins to actually connect together and move your input and output energy. You might explore how you could use one input to create multiple outputs. So instead of connecting just one straw to another straw, you might connect your movement straw to multiple straws. And how might that motion change when you're moving your initial input energy straw? I think we're coming close. Oh, these are looking very good. I think we might almost be there. What we might do is, while Governor General and Mrs. Hurley finish up their mechanisms, we might have a look at an Australian inventor and some of the things that he created. So mechanisms and having an understanding of how they work have been utilised by engineers and innovators for many, many years. And a fantastic Australian innovator was David Uniapon. David Uniapon was a Ngarrindjeri man whose familial lands are located in South Australia. You might actually recognise his face from the Australian $50 note. He's been honoured with a place on our currency since 1995. In the early 1900s, David designed a brand new mechanical shearing tool which revolutionised the way that farmers processed wool when they were cutting it off their sheep. In the centre of the slide, you can actually see the sketches he made when he submitted his patent application. That is his writing and his sketches. Over his life, David Uniapon was credited with 19 different inventions, and like we alluded to earlier, he actually anticipated the creation of a machine that could fly, utilising the same principles as a boomerang. You can see his words on the slide here where he's talking about the boomerang principle. So he's talking about how boomerangs are shaped and how they fly through the air according to the velocity or the speed with which they were thrown. And he predicted that an aeroplane flies in much of a similar way. Turns out his design and his description was actually what a helicopter would be, but he designed it before World War I even broke out. He's been referred to as Australia's Leonardo da Vinci, but I actually think we should refer to him as Australia's David Uniapon, our First Nations Australian inventor and a really strong advocate for the rights and recognition of First Nations Australians. So, how are we going with our creation of our mechanisms? They look fantastic. Let's have a look. Now, I can see what is going on in yours, Governor General.
I have a bird here who is eating from the flower.
Fantastic. Well, I think that would be a very happy bird.
I see this quite often at Government House. And so
I bet. I've heard there are beautiful gardens at Government House. And what have you got going on, Mrs. Hurley?
Oh, we're having a party.
I love it.
The koala and the snail are getting together for a little picnic.
Fantastic.
In the forest.
Lovely. And are they having a bit of a boogie too?
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
Yep. So the koala can come down to speak and be closer to his friend. Or he can go back and be looking down on his snail friend.
We could write a book about this.
I think so too, absolutely.
The snail and the koala. Yeah,
Everybody
would be fantastic. Lovely. Well, thank you so much. Now, I've got, or you've got rather, on your left-hand side there, Governor General, beside your materials, 2 examples of some slightly more complicated mechanisms. What have you got going on over there?
Well, these are like scissors, aren't they? These are.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Hurley. I shouldn't have given the Governor General that deadly instrument.
Yeah, my finger's gone.
Oh, no.
So we've just taken the basic idea of the movement being transferred in a different direction from this design and just done a more complicated version of it.
Absolutely.
And a bit of experimentation makes you be able to extend. And we see
Absolutely.
these things. I've got a grandson who's 3.5 years old, and if he sees something like this, he will say, that's a scissor lift.
Absolutely.
So you might see those in shops when people are putting up Christmas decorations or out working in the streets, putting up telegraph poles and wires and so forth. They'll use something like this, painting,
Absolutely.
put a platform on the top and mechanically drive it up.
They're very
climb.
useful, these mechanisms. They allow us to do important jobs or more easily than if we were trying to do them just with our own muscles.
That would be like cranes as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, some of them like
Perhaps,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got another one here. And in this one, we've made it slightly more complicated because we've got our mechanism on the bottom and we've combined something else in it. I wonder if you can spot what happens. What do you see, Mrs. Hurley?
Ah, I can see. You see?
Like it.
The light comes on.
Absolutely. So we use the mechanism to shut the door of the lighthouse and the light turns on. Fantastic. So we've combined our understanding of mechanical engineering there with some other types of engineering to create some light. Now, could I have that, please? Now, Mrs. Hurley, I wonder if you could hold this, please, and Governor General, if you could hold that. Now, Mrs. Hurley, I would love it if you could use the energy from your breakfast to turn that handle there.
I haven't had breakfast.
Oh, my goodness, it's the most important
do it
meal of the
gently.
day, Mrs. Hurley. What do you see happening, Governor General?
As the light bulb is flashing on and off as Linda turns, and if she turned faster, it will become brighter.
Oh, fantastic.
We've transferred the energy of turning here through this device in here, and people can tell
Absolutely.
us, like a little generator, and we are now generating electricity.
Fantastic. And the more energy that Mrs. Hurley puts into it, the brighter the light turns on. Fantastic. Now, Mrs. Hurley, how many lights do you have at Government House that you have to turn on with a hand crank every day? That'd be a lot of breakfast.
None.
None. Oh.
Our lights just come on.
Oh, you just flick
push
the
the
switch.
button.
Oh, that's very lucky because I couldn't imagine having to try and wind that up to use the computer every day. That would be very, very
But
difficult.
we were saying the other day, at least, remember early days of remote schooling to our rural communities. Today we have School of the Air,
Yes.
which is all done through modern science with radios and TV and Wi-Fi and so forth. But in the old days, they used a foot pedal.
Ooh.
And they used to have to pedal while they were talking on the radio.
A little bit like riding a bike?
Yeah, they had
to talk
bike
on the radio.
pedals down underneath the table, and they'd have to ride the bike, and that would generate electricity so they could do their schooling.
That was like sewing machines as well.
So-
you had to push at the bottom.
Press on the bottom like riding a bike.
It
You'd
was,
have to be very fit.
It's a great way to be educated and keep fit.
That's right, exactly. I don't know if I could do that and not puff at the same time. I don't know that anyone on the other end would be able to understand
same
what I
what
was
I'm
saying. I'd have to work too hard. Okay, so we've just looked at some mechanisms. We've looked at a slightly more difficult mechanism there. I'm wondering if we can use our understandings of mechanisms and mechanical engineering to find another way to find some power for a useful job, like turning on a light. We said earlier that we were going to be talking about windmills. I wonder, Governor General, can you think of any ways that windmills power industry in Australia?
Well, we use it right now in the ACT because the majority of our electrical energy in Australia, in the ACT, comes through solar and wind
Wind turbines.
generated wind turbines. And as Linda said, as you drive from Canberra towards Sydney, left and right hand side of the road, as you get to Lake George, there are huge windmill farms.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing. Now, I think you were telling me the other day, Mrs. Hurley, about a windmill museum you went to where you saw lots of different types of windmills. Did they talk anything about what some of those windmills might have been useful for other than generating power?
Did they? Did they? Or did we
Well,
just
crushing
the
flour.
Fantastic.
Yeah, turning a mill, a grindstone to do those sorts of things.
There's a lot of those. They're not windmills though, where they store grain.
Yeah, like silos.
Yeah, yeah.
I imagine you could use a windmill perhaps to lift grain up into those silos. Maybe some of the people who are joining us today might live on a farm where they use a windmill to draw water up from under the ground.
Well, we see that out in a lot of our country properties. When we've got bore water, we use the wind to drive the pump to bring the water up.
To bring the water up from the ground.
Yeah, we've got friends on farms who have bore water.
Yeah.
And I suppose the problem we're trying to solve here is how do you change what the wind does with a fan type object? How does it change the energy from that direction to do something else you want it to do? So how do you use mechanisms connected to that source of energy to do something for you?
Yeah, to do a useful job. That's what we're going to explore now, Governor General. So we've actually made our own mini windmill for this challenge. But instead of making electricity, what we're actually going to do is use our useful energy to lift up a basket with a passenger in it, a bit like a lift. I'm not sure why our passenger would want to get to the top of our windmill today, but we're going to use it as an example anyway. Now, the better our windmill works, the faster our lift should rise. But I'm looking at our windmill here and it seems to be missing something really important. What might it be missing?
The things that make the
Catch the wind.
turn around.
Yeah, that's right. Something
The
to actually
blades.
catch some wind.
Yeah.
Wind is really powerful, like you've been describing, but we actually need something to catch it. So that is what our challenge is going to be this morning, is we're going to design some blades for our windmill to actually try and catch the wind as efficiently as we can to lift up our passenger. Now I've got an example here. And I've taken a cardboard disc here and I've stuck down to it some skewers that allow me to attach some blades, and I've just taped those on. Now, part of our challenge today will be to actually design what shape our blades will be, how many we might want to go on our windmill, and even perhaps some of our students at home might be adapting the material their blades are made out of. So let's have a look and see how these blades that I've designed today actually go lifting up our passenger. So we're going to blue tack them to the front of our windmill, and I'll get my handy helper off screen to turn on our big industrial fan, and we'll see what happens to our windmill. Oh, slowly moving, up we come. Oh, this passenger is struggling. We're getting there. It's the scenic route, I think. Got the opportunity to really have a look.
Hey,
Fantastic.
Good.
Ooh, now they're really there.
A fairly large chicken, though.
It is a large chicken. It's had a very good life, I think. So, those blades are okay, but I have a feeling that the two of you might be able to innovate some better blades that might catch the wind a little more strongly and lift our chicken up a little bit less in the scenic route, but maybe not firing them into space. We don't want to go too fast, I would think. So I've got in this box here, I've got some cardboard discs and some paddle pop sticks and skewers that you could use to connect your blades. And we've got some paper over there that you can design some shape of some blades if you want, or you could utilise some of our creatures and things that we've cut out here if you'd like to explore.
Would you like green?
So I'll pop them over here.
Yeah, green's fine.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll take our party and just pop it down here for a moment. Fantastic. Okay, so if I pull these blades off, I will leave you. Maybe we could start with designing the shape of our blades. Oh, just unwound itself. So we've got some pens and pencils up here. We've got our discs and paper. What shape might you like your blades to be today? Fantastic. So something that our engineers and our innovators need to think about is trying out new ideas. And I can see at the moment, Mrs. Hurley, are you thinking about maybe having a shorter blade across your windmill?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. I like that as an
So,
innovation. Maybe that will do a better job at catching the wind than having a long blade. And Governor General, I can see that you've pulled out the ruler. What are you doing over there?
I'm going to make 4 blades,
Okay.
and I'm just measuring out how far I think they
Oh, we've
might
got
have
that
to
bit,
be
haven't we?
on the,
Yes, that's it.
how far they might have to be up the blade,
Up the blade.
to be effective, and so allow me some room to stick them on here as well.
Fantastic. And do you have a design in mind at the moment? Or
A rough one.
A rough one. And what are you thinking your design might be based on?
Well, I'm going to try to make it a bit like a sail, roughly triangular, but it's got 4 sides,
Yes.
and I think one straight side onto the here, and then I've got enough surface away from the stick to catch the wind.
Okay, so you're drawing on some knowledge that you might have in other places.
Well, you've seen old, if you've seen old paintings from, or old windmills from the Netherlands, for example.
Yes.
I remember seeing those. They had a sort of triangular
Shape.
or roughly triangular, so I'm looking at those.
Okay, that's a great idea. So you're utilising some of your prior knowledge, accessing some information that you might already know about windmills that you've seen in the past.
So I'm
Fantastic.
not being 100% innovative,
Not
but I'm
quite.
adapting from their ideas.
You're using your prior knowledge as a basis for your ideas. I
Because
like that.
I doubt if they ever lifted a chicken using Dutch windmills.
You know, I don't know. Maybe a clog, but or some tulips, perhaps?
Maybe tulip baskets. Yes.
Maybe not a chicken. So maybe that's our innovation for the day.
Can you move?
Fantastic. So I would love to see what you're doing at home where you're creating your blades. So don't forget that we've got our Padlet that you can go to and send us photos, or tell me a little bit about what you're thinking about when you're designing your blades. Maybe you're utilizing some different materials instead of using paper. Now we've had some questions come in on the Padlet. We've got a comment there. It says, I wonder, what if it wasn't a windy day? Would a windmill still move? That's a really great question. Now, I don't know that I've ever seen a windmill move when it's not a windy day, being powered by the wind itself. So we need wind to move a windmill. But I wonder, have you seen any examples of windmills, Governor General or Mrs. Hurley, moving on their own?
I don't think so.
No?
Well, you can see the same shape designs using water, for example, rather than wind.
Absolutely.
So if you, again, to travel to Europe, a lot of their old devices they use, mills they use for crushing wheat and corn and so forth, were driven by
Absolutely,
by
by
paddles
water.
that went through the water.
Absolutely.
It's the
So,
same idea, though, using
Yes.
something like that to make something turn.
yeah, we're
that's what-
catching some kind of power or some kind of energy with a blade and using that to turn something, to do a useful job. So maybe it's not a windmill, but it is a type of
Mill.
mechanism using a wheel
And
that
they-
allows us to do a
They
useful
call
job.
them mills.
And they call them mills, absolutely. The other question we've got is from Amir at the Coast Christian School, and he asked, how long can a windmill last for? And I wonder, that's probably, I could think of answering that in 2 different ways. One of them could be, how long might the windmill turn for? And I suppose we sort of already answered that, as long as we've got wind blowing. But in terms of how long a windmill might last for, now I believe when you're talking about the windmills that are at the Windmill Museum and windmills that can be located around Europe and around Australia, some of those have been up for hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Maybe changing the material on the that's catching the wind, but the frame and everything else will be pretty much the same.
that's right. The actual tower.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Mrs.
no,
Hurley.
sorry, that was my
The
fault.
actual tower and the mechanism inside, as long as it's protected, I would think that it would last a really long time. But like the Governor General said, we might need to change the material of the actual blades or the external mechanism more regularly because of weather. But windmills last a really long time. Great questions. Thank you so much, everyone. So when we talk about our engineers, like we mentioned earlier, they're trying new ideas, they're innovating. The Governor General is referring back to things that he's seen before. And I can see, Mrs. Hurley, that you've got another design going on. What are you thinking about with your design?
I'm just hoping it works.
Okay,
Innovation.
innovation. So whereas the Governor General is leading more strongly towards things that he's already seen, you are really focusing on the imaginative side of the innovation, aren't you?
Yes, my windmill's going to be like a little castle.
Ooh, I like the idea of that. In what way are you thinking you want to make it like a castle?
Oh, well, I think we should have a damsel in distress on the top.
The chicken is coming up to rescue her. Right.
And then the handsome chicken comes and rescues her.
I think we could organise that. I believe we might have a damsel in distress that we could put in the top of our windmill.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Linda is good at writing stories.
Or maybe it could be an elephant in distress, because I think that might be what's on top of the
The elephant might
jar.
be too heavy. I'm not
Maybe.
sure.
Oh, what about a sheep in distress? A damsel of a ewe.
Are you in distress?
Yes, you could ask, are you in distress?
Now I've got to put
Thank you
some
very much. Here we
sticks
go.
on it.
All right.
Is this going on this?
Yes.
So we don't have to do the other bits.
No,
we just
you don't
do
have to
this
make
bit.
the whole
Okay.
windmill. We're going to use this one.
So can I
but
have
we're
a
going to.
look?
Yes, absolutely, you can, Mrs. Hurley. What do you think of that?
Okay.
All right. We're trucking along here. Fantastic. Now, have we got any blades coming up on the Padlet? What are we
Photos?
seeing?
Any photos of
Any
blades?
photos going on? What's happening at schools? Oh, we've got some images of art. People have placed up there for us. You would only be able to get places by ship. So we would have to, in the same way that you were talking about sails before, Governor General, we'd need
Capture
to
wind.
capture wind
That's
using
right.
the sails to propel our ships. Fantastic connection there, Hugh and Coast Christian. Love that. Oh, and when we were talking about innovation earlier, without innovation, people would needed to have walked everywhere because there were no aeroplanes. And it was a while before we had cars as well.
Long time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of good thoughts coming out of Hewan.
Horsepowers.
Um,
Right. I need a circle.
oh, you've got a circle right there. Crosby Connerman has pointed out that windmills can also be on the ocean. They don't need to be on land.
That's right.
So we can locate turbines out in the ocean.
We're doing a lot of that at the moment, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Internationally.
Looking for lots of different places to connect in our ideas and collect our wind and power for useful jobs.
I don't have much fun like this every day, you know.
Oh,
this is good.
that's why we
Alice,
come
thank
to
you for-
Questacon, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I love
Looking for
coming to
fun.
Questacon. Yes. And looking at the bees. I love looking at the bees here.
Oh, we do have a beautiful beehive. It's located just outside of the studio here
Yep.
for anyone that's come to Questacon before. Oh, fantastic. We're seeing some images on the Padlet of some mechanisms. Oh, fantastic.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, I love it. We've created some stories through adding some cartoon characters.
Yeah.
Oh,
very
I
good.
love it.
And I'm not sure whether that's going to stop my wind.
I'm not sure either, Mrs.
turning.
Hurley.
Well, I'll give it a go.
It's always worth giving things a go. We can try them out, and if they don't work, we go back and have another go. Fantastic. Now, one of the features that I think of when I think of windmills is the centered disc, but then I also think of some kind of stick or way that our blades are spread out from the center of our windmill.
Should put him in the middle, I think.
Oh,
Of course, I do need some
decoration.
sticks.
Decoration.
do maybe need some sticks, something perhaps to propel or allow the wind to go past.
Okay. Forgot about them.
That's okay.
Would these,
I like your
would
colours.
these be good?
I'm
Or
not
is they
sure,
too
Mrs.
heavy?
Hurley. Give it a go.
I tried those at home. I'm going to try this. See
Okay,
if it-
try some paddle pop sticks.
yeah, it might not work. But
That's all right. We'll try them, and then
never
if
know.
it doesn't quite do what we want, we go back and have another go. It's one of those great steps in innovation where we start exploring different ideas, and when they don't work, we just give it another go.
Righto. We're on.
All right, Governor General has some blades to test. Would you like to come and place them on the front of the windmill there? Okay, so you've gone with a more traditional
Very
four-blade system.
traditional, yes.
There's nothing wrong with traditional.
And if I add more blades, it might go faster.
Ooh, maybe that could be the next stage
Thanks.
of innovating.
Righto.
So we test these out. I'll get my handy helper back here.
Get the wind generator there.
Get some wind. He's very good at it. Is he though? Oh, maybe our fan has come unplugged. It doesn't quite want to turn on. Ah, here we go. Fantastic. Sometimes these things happen when we're innovating. Ooh.
Whoops, so
Oh.
easy.
Get the right angle.
Nearly
No,
there.
I
Ooh, we
know what I
don't
need to
seem
do.
be catching the wind. What are you thinking, Governor General?
I just have to angle them a bit.
Okay, so you might have to adjust the angle that your blades are on
Yes,
to
I
allow them
just
to
have to
catch the
angle
wind a
them.
little bit better. Fantastic. Good observation.
I shall just change that.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Hurley, are you ready to test?
Yeah.
I could move this over a little bit to make it a bit easier.
Yeah. Oh, I like you better work.
The koala has been told. Let me turn it around so
Okay.
everyone can see the koala at home. Otherwise, it sounds like you might be scolding a cardboard disc, Mrs. Hurley. All right, let's see how the koala works. You know the job, koala. Oh, no. It's happened again.
Blow.
Whee! Beautiful.
Come on, go.
They come from the side. Bring the wind to the side. Oops.
Ooh, with a little bit of a push start, it gets going.
Yeah, it needs a kick.
Might need a little bit more space, perhaps, between the middle and our design.
What do you mean?
Well, maybe if you took the pieces that are back here and put them on the end of your paddle pop sticks, slide
These
them
red
out from the
ones?
middle. Yeah, the red and maybe the green even.
Right, let's see how we get
All right, so you've changed the angle there, Governor General, on your blades.
Yep.
They're all pointing in the same direction. Great. Oh, there we go.
Ah, save the chicken!
Oh, my goodness.
Save the chicken!
Save the windmill. Goodness me. We didn't need the chicken to rescue the ewe. Just blew it right off the
Blew it
top
off the
there.
top. There.
That is a powerful blade.
Together. Right.
Goodness gracious. That is a successful windmill. All right. So, I wonder, we've got only a couple more minutes to play with our windmill blades today. That doesn't mean that you won't be able to continue working on them at school or at home if you've got time for those. But we'll have a look at Mrs. Hurley's. Mrs. Hurley's taken off her paddle pop sticks. We'll see if that makes a difference. I'm ready to catch the sheep. Oh, it's very good. What it is very good at doing, Mrs. Hurley, is catching the wind to slide the mast along. So at the moment it seems to be pushing and catching it directly, a bit like a bulldozer.
Can you put that on the side?
Oh,
I missed it.
That's when I did it. It worked better.
Okay, so maybe it's not such a great design for this kind of windmill, but if we wanted to use our windmill or we wanted to catch some wind to push something along, that might be a really good design because it's really good at catching that wind and translating that into horizontal
I'm
direction.
pleased she's chosen the Rabbitohs colours for her.
You have a bit of an affiliation to the Rabbitohs,
Well,
do
we're
you,
very strong
Governor General?
Rabbits fans here. Yes.
Do you think, was that deliberate, Mrs. Hurley? Or was it an accidental choice?
No, it was. I realised once I'd cut it all out, but yeah. No, well, I realised when I chose it, but I wasn't choosing it for that reason.
Fair enough. It could also be the
Subconscious.
colour of a poppy too.
Yes.
Or a rose, some other kind of thing. But we'll let the Governor General think it's for the Rabbitohs.
Right.
Okay, so did you both feel like engineers when you were making your windmill mill blades by any chance?
Well, we were talking earlier about that whole innovation and engineering process, and so I think the feeling is not so much from, we love making things, but how do you tackle the problem?
Absolutely.
And where do you start?
Absolutely.
And do you look at, some people like to describe the problem and then pull the problem apart, look at the elements and say, okay, what have we got to do to solve that? Others will go straight to solutions and just do trial and error until it works.
Absolutely.
And have good ideas. So, there is a particular design process, and people have their strengths and weaknesses in that.
Absolutely.
Learn the process and see what you're good at.
Absolutely. So let's pop up on the screen here a copy of an engineering design process. So engineers organise their thoughts using a thinking strategy. And this is an example of one. In ours, we've got 5 stages. So I'd love for you to have a think at school. How do you use a thinking strategy when you're solving a problem? What steps might you use? So Governor General, you were talking about a process for answering or tackling a challenge and how different people might use different strategies. There are 5 different ideas here. So asking questions, imagining, planning, creating, improving. Where do you start when you're looking to solve a problem?
Well, I think I do start at the ask bit.
Yes.
On the top there, because when people want a problem solved, they've got to, okay, what are we particularly trying to achieve here? What do you really want to come out of this? And so then you've got an end point or something you're going to. And then in the old days we used to call it brainstorming, throw around ideas.
Absolutely.
How would you might do it? Settle on one. Okay, let's try that. And then how do I test it as I'm going along, that it's working? Make it, create it. And then, okay, we've got something that does 50% of what we want. How do we make it better?
Absolutely.
And go through the same process again.
Absolutely. And it's definitely, and that's something we emphasise is really important, is you don't have to do this once. Engineers and innovators do this kind of ideation over and over and over again. And you don't have to always follow that particular process. You don't have to ask your questions first and then do your imagining and then do your planning. Mrs. Hurley, do you have a favourite step when you're trying to solve a problem?
I'd just firstly like to say to the students that don't give up. Like, I'm really disappointed that mine didn't work. I'm really disappointed, but I will try again and again until I can actually achieve it. So if you're having those kind of thoughts, don't think that this is not for you. Just give it a go.
Keep working on it.
And then when you do have success, it'll be really exciting for you.
Well, it's like when we go and visit research institutes. Linda loves to talk to the people there and just say to them, thank you for the persistence you have, because not every day is a wow moment.
Absolutely.
And not every day is a breakthrough. So that's the determination, I think. Somewhere in that design process is stickability. Stay with the job.
Stay with it. Keep working on it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I suppose what you're talking about there, Mrs. Hurley, is that combination of creating and improving and continually working in that space until you find something that works and does the job that you want to do. It's not always going to be the first thing that you try that actually comes out with the solution that you want.
And that's what engineers and scientists do. Sometimes they work for years and years and years. They don't get wow moments every day, but they never ever give up.
Absolutely. Just keep trying. Know what your end goal is and what you're looking to do and keep working towards it. That's a fantastic message, Mrs. Hurley. Thank you. So what I'd love to know is, and I already asked you this, pop onto the Padlet. What kind of steps and strategies might you use when you're solving a problem? Is there one of these steps that you might like to try that you've never done before? Maybe you've always jumped into building something from scratch and you've not ever tried planning before, thinking about what materials that you've got available to you and how they might be useful. Or maybe you've only had one go and unlike Mrs. Hurley, like Mrs. Hurley was describing, you haven't had a chance yet to go back and try multiple attempts at changing your designs and seeing how successful they can be. So today we've had a look at how mechanical engineers are innovators when they're designing solutions and problems. And we have so many innovators across Australia, like David Unayapon, leading the creation of amazing technologies for our lives. We built our own mechanisms and we were able to turn an energy or a movement into an output energy or movement. We might have even used that mechanism to tell a story, like Mrs. Hurley's party with her snail and her koala in the forest, and the Governor General having his bird eating from a sunflower. We also then took our innovation skills and we caught some wind and we tried to use that energy to lift a passenger up in a basket. We've had a huge morning of innovation today. So as we come to the end of the Governor General's Design Challenge for 2023, I want to encourage you to keep an eye out for innovation in your everyday life, at school, down the street, or at home. And what do you find that has been made more fantastic or easier to use by the engineers and innovators in our world? Governor General, Mrs. Hurley, have you had a good time today?
Excellent time.
It's lovely. I would have liked my
Well,
mine to
I can
actually
tell you
blow.
I can tell you what
but
we'll be
don't
doing
worry
all
about
weekend. We will be
Improving
making
on your
windmills.
designs. Absolutely.
We'll be in that design process all weekend.
Going around and around and around.
So if you hear this big roar coming from Government House, that'll be success.
If all the
It'll be-
lights suddenly get brighter,
it'll be brilliant.
your windmills have worked.
And none of our staff are going on leave this weekend, or they're all
Everyone's
staying at
making
the
windmills. Thank you so much for joining us here at Questacon. Is there anything that you would like to say as we're finishing up today?
Linda.
I'd just like to congratulate all the students, and I'd also like to thank the teachers who are there helping their students, and think about the things that we use on a daily basis, and think about how is someone clever enough to do that? And we have so many amazing people in Australia who do the most fantastic things, and they don't get adulation every single day. It's not like being a football player. But scientists are so special to our country. And I visited lots of laboratories and just seen the work that they do. And when we get sick or something breaks, we expect that there'll be someone to fix it for us. So perhaps some of you might grow up to be a scientist, a researcher, and we need lots of special people just like that. So I hope you've had a lot of fun, and I hope that your windmills did turn around for you. If they didn't, give it another go.
Fantastic.
I can't say any more than that, and just keep focused on this. It is important, and there's a lot of fun things to do in science. But there's a lot of testing of those, what's up in here. So please get the basics now. They're so important to where we go in the future. If you can't imagine your life without your mobile phone, if you've got one, then someone had to invent what was inside it, how it was connected, how we reach around the globe, how we store information. All those sorts of things come out of knowledge of basic science. Simple.
And come and visit Questacon, because
Yeah,
there's lots of really exciting things to look at here.
And good people.
Absolutely. And the great news is if you're located a long distance away from Canberra, Questacon might even be able to come to you. So get your teachers to keep an eye out for our travelling teams. Now, thank you all so much for joining us today. I just want to quickly say to the educators who are joining us today, I've got a couple of other tips. This task comes from page 50 of the National Science Week resource book. And if you're looking for some extensions on that activity, that guide is for free. It's on the internet. You can go and check that out. It also contains a whole bunch of other different fantastic activities that you could utilise across National Science Week. The other thing that you might want to check out is the fact that Deadly Science, in collaboration with Australia Post, have produced the Deadly Science Guide to Innovation for National Science Week this year. It's also free to download and features First Nations science across Australia. The last thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the fact that these activities come from the Engineering is Elementary unit of work about catching the wind. And if you're interested in finding out more and attending some free professional development around incorporating engineering and STEM into your classrooms, please keep an eye out for the Engineering is Elementary team. We travel all around the country, and we also provide virtual workshops. When this presentation finishes, a QR code will go up on the screen that will lead you to our website, where you can find out further information about Engineering is Elementary and the rest of the fantastic outreach opportunities that Questacon has for teachers and students across the country. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you've had a great time innovating. Yes. You've been creative and imaginative and been able to harness some useful energy. Have a fantastic National Science Week, and we hope to see you here soon in Questacon. Have a great day.